Thank you. Let us move on to the next speaker. Who wants to come first now? Sucheta, can you please call out the name? Then I can
Next is Shelli, actually.
Shelli, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have sent me the...
Yeah, I have shared. Yeah.
Shared yours, yes. Thank you. Okay, so Shelli is going to speak about space sustainability as a business and economic imperative by Shelli Brunswick, Chief Operating Officer, Space Foundation Global Chair, the Great Leaders Council USA. She is CEO of Space Foundation, brings a broad perspective and deep vision of the global space ecosystem from the distinguished career as a space acquisition and program management leader and congressional liaison for the US Air Force to her current role overseeing Space Foundation's 3 primary divisions: Center for Innovations and Education, Symposium 365, and the Global Alliance.
Space for you, space for all, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
And everything's working. Okay, so this is why we ask those questions, because you want to make sure all the technical glitches are handled. Zoom is a wonderful thing that we can all connect globally, but we have to make sure the technology also works. So thank you so much for joining. I know it's late there, and I know we're around the world. It's very early where I live. So good morning to people who might be in North America, and good evening to those who may be in India and elsewhere. It's so deeply gratifying to join you to talk about how space is for all of us and how space supports the Sustainable Development Goals. So at Space Foundation, we believe that by advocating for innovation, we are bettering life on Earth. So what we have is we have 3 main divisions at Space Foundation. We have our first division, which is Symposium 365, our Center for Innovation and Education, and Global Alliance. And each of those divisions has a different mission. Symposium 365 is our annual conference and your trusted source for information. Our Center for Innovation and Education is all about lifelong learning, creating that workforce development pipeline, and creating diversity, equity, and inclusion in the space industry. And then our third division is Global Alliance. It's about partnerships and how do we build this across the world. So when we look at 2021, what took place in the space industry? Well, an exciting thing was private citizens made it to space via commercial companies. We also saw the US land a rover called Perseverance on Mars and flew a drone called Ingenuity. Now think about it. Human beings flew an aircraft on another planet. And now we're having record-setting orbital launches from all countries around the world to help us explore space. In 2022, we're having an exciting year. Just this past week, the US launched a rocket called Artemis that is to return humanity to the moon. We also are receiving beautiful images and information from the James Webb Space Telescope. The image behind me, my background, is one of those images that we're learning about the origins of the universe. And we're seeing companies around the world partner to create lunar rovers and activities that will help to benefit as we expand into space. But you may be thinking, we're here to talk about sustainability. And what does that have to do with going to Mars and the moon and beyond? And we do want to talk about going to Mars and the moon and beyond, but we also want to bring that technology back here to make life better on Earth and help humanity here on Earth. When you think about the global space economy, in 2021, it was $469 billion. And depending who you listen to, whether it's CNBC, Bank of America, or other financial analysts, they're all saying that global space economy is going to grow, and it's going to grow to $1.4 trillion by 2030 and over $3 trillion by 2040. And there are more than 90 countries operating in space right now. And the most exciting part of all that space is that 7 77% of it is commercial. It's products and services we're using every day to make our lives better, starting with this Zoom call.
Oh,
No, earlier it was working. I mean, I could see the,
no, actually, she did
Video.
not stop sharing. So unless she stops her screen sharing, Shelly cannot share.
okay, but I could see Shelly's because in view option, it showed me her Shelly's name. So I could click on Shelly and could see the presentation, but now it is gone.
Well, I took it down, so I'll bring it back up and you can tell me if you can see it.
Okay,
Are you able to see it now?
yes. But
Okay,
I
so,
go to view options and click on Shelly, please, because you don't need to bother whether she's disconnected or not. Just go to view options, click it, and you will see Shelly's name and click on Shelly's name. That's it.
You can see it now. Thank you.
okay, perfect.
Yes.
So I
Please
will try the,
continue. Yes,
I will
please
try the
continue.
okay, I will try the video again and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Altitude, velocity, light. 8 amps down. 220 feet. 15 forward. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff on Apollo 11.
Dave, an extraordinary television picture here.
And this is exploration at its greatest.
This nation should commit itself to achieving the goal of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Hey, Jana. Can you hear me? Are you there?
Okay, Houston, as I stand out here in the wonders of the unknown at Hadley, I try to realize there's a fundamental truth to our nature. Man must explore.
Well, I hope you were able to see some of the video or hear the
Yes.
video. But what I'll highlight with this slide is many of the technology we're using every day came from space, starting with the ability to use Zoom, that communication structure. We can also all pick up our cell phones and you can look at many of the imaging technology that we're using to take those great pictures or selfies came from space technology. And my husband was a firefighter for 30 years. And so he ran into burning buildings to save people's lives. But thanks to space technology, fire retardant clothing, he was able to come home every night. So we are using that space technology that took us to the moon 50 years ago to help us today. So as we look to return to the moon and go on to Mars, that will continue to better us here, better our lives here on Earth. So we really want to focus on what does that mean for the Sustainable Development Goals. And we all know the Sustainable Development Goals were agreed to by all the UN members in 2015, and space is part of each and every one of them. At Space Foundation, we're really focused on a few of them. I mean, we care about all of them, but we're really focused on gender equality, quality education, partnerships for the goals, economic opportunity. And I'm going to highlight a few of the Sustainable Development Goals and how space technology is part of them. So when we think about food security, how critical that is around the planet, especially with climate change. And so what I'm highlighting on this slide is 3 different types of space technology that is helping us. Starting with the left, these are 3 amazing entrepreneurs that I met at Qatar, and they started their company when they were still students at Qatar University. What they wanted to do was create a healthy, delicious snack that would also reduce food waste. So what they did is they used fruits and vegetables that are normally thrown away, And using NASA freeze-dried technology, they're able to create a healthy, delicious snack that also helps to reduce food waste. In the center of the picture, you're looking at Dr. Catherine Nakalibi, who won the African Food Prize in 2020. And she did this by using remote sensing technology. So by using satellites to look down on the earth, we can look at crops that are growing. And I know one of our presentation was about agriculture. We can look at the agriculture and determine what agricultural and crops are healthy, what might need pest control, what might have drought conditions or fertilizer, and we're able to better understand what's happening with that crop yield and determine, will it be successful or will there be a failure? And if there's going to be a crop failure, can we put food reserves in place to prevent famine? So we can use Earth technology or space technology to help us with managing agriculture. The third technology I'll highlight is on the far right. Now, this is at Kennedy Space Center, and they're using it to do vertical farming. So as we go to live on the moon and Mars, we're going to have to grow food inside. But what we've learned is we can also grow food here on Earth inside. Now, the agricultural methods we have of clearing land, growing crops, is not going to be sustainable forever. You know, there's only so much land that we can use, and with climate change, but growing food indoors closer to large population centers requires artificial intelligence, climate control. You use far less water, far less agriculture, you don't need soil. And so you can grow more crops closer to population centers that are more nutritious, and you don't have to move food from around the planet to different areas of the planet, which would also reduce our carbon footprint by not having to move food around the planet. We can grow it closer to population centers. So just an example of 3 technologies that space has created that can benefit us here on Earth and help support those sustainable development goals of food security. We can think about water. We're seeing major drought conditions around the planet. So the first point I'll highlight is we as a human species have been living in space for more than 20 years on the International Space Station. That means everything we consume water-wise has to be recycled and reused. And so what they've created, NASA has created filtration systems to filter water so it can be recycled, and also test that water to make sure it's safe from harmful contaminants. Now, why is that so important? Well, I have on this slide my good friend Lumbi. And Lumbi grew up in Africa where she would have to walk to retrieve water for her family. And there are still girls and women in Africa that may have to walk 4 to 10 miles one way to retrieve water for their family and their animals. And even after they retrieve the water, it could be contaminated and make them and their animals sick. But 2 things. 1, we can use that NASA technology to test the contaminated water to make sure it's safe to drink. So if there's a hurricane, wells could get contaminated with water that flooded. And so we can test wells and other resources of water after major incidents like hurricanes or typhoons to make sure the water is safe to drink. The other thing we can do that Lumbi has started with her nonprofit is drill wells closer to where the villages are. So women don't have to walk 4 to 10 miles. They only have to walk 30 minutes each way. This then allows them to go to school and allows them to get educated and to have jobs. And creating education and jobs for women helps to eliminate poverty. It helps to increase health and well-being because now the water is safe to drink, and girls and women are now able to have economic opportunity. So just by looking at creating better solutions for water, we can help solve several of the sustainable development goals. And space technology has created ways to test water, as well as you can find in many stores where you can get that space technology to do the water purification. So you'll see hikers that will take that technology and go hiking, but you can literally filter stream water so that you can drink any kind of water. So I share that space technology is available today. It's been commercialized and it's benefiting us. The last area I'll share is about energy. We know that we need to look at different sources of energy in order to create affordable and clean energy for everyone on the planet. I'm going to start with solar panels, which is a very old technology that came about from the space industry. So what NASA is currently working on is how do we upgrade that technology? How do we make it more efficient? And the other thing we've learned is we need to make it self-cleaning, because on Mars, there can be huge dust storms that can cover half the planet and cover those solar panels, which means they become less efficient, and slowly our rovers die because they aren't able to recharge fully. But we also have huge dust storms here on planet Earth. If we want to put solar panels in places like deserts or other areas, they can easily get covered with films of dust. So can we make them self-cleaning, which means they actually vibrate? They vibrate, they clean. Do we make them more efficient? And do we make them less expensive so that this technology can be used around the world? We're also looking, multiple countries are looking at putting solar arrays in outer space and capturing the sun's energy in outer space. So you would launch the solar arrays in panels that can be then assembled in space and then harness that technology and transmit it down to Earth. We're also looking at technology such as nuclear energy. How do we have sustained settlements on the moon and Mars? Well, we're not going to be able to send resources from Earth. So how can those settlements be self-sustaining? And nuclear power is one of them. They've also looked at helium-3, which is a form of nuclear energy on the moon, but it doesn't have a radiation component like nuclear energy does here on Earth. So space is part of several of the solutions we're looking at to create more affordable and clean energy. So I do have another video, but it sounds like they may not be working as well. So I'll just move into the next component and really highlight the technology and innovation. You know, when we look back 50 years ago, we were looking to put the first man on the moon, and it was a space race between two nations. Again, now there are more than 90 nations operating in space, and now we want to put the first woman and person of color on the moon. These are the different types of technology that are part of the space industry. And this is technology that we've talked about throughout this conference: communications, healthcare, quantum, artificial intelligence, robotics. Each of these technologies is related to the space industry. And when we think about the space economic sectors, you can see on the right hand of the screen, there is definitely the space component. And that's the stuff that relates to rockets and astronauts and going to the moon and Mars. But the other sectors are also part of the space industry. We talked about agriculture and energy, but we also look at the financial system, you know, our entire financial system around the world. You can think about blockchain, Web3, that is all running on space technology and cybersecurity, healthcare, the Internet of Things. So if you're interested in the space economy and you're interested in the technology I've shared, there's a place for you in the space industry. And the even better part is a lot of the technology I've highlighted in my talk, like from 50 years ago, from the Apollo era, both NASA, the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency have a technology transfer office where they have thousands of patents that are waiting to be commercialized that are in those sectors: healthcare, communications, agriculture. So if you're interested in being in the space sector and you're looking for a way to commercialize technology, you can go to those websites and look what's there, and maybe that helps you come up with your own idea, or you apply to commercialize that technology. I also want to highlight, as we close out the talk, that the workforce has changed from the 1960s to today. You know, when we look at that picture on the left, that's mission control from the Apollo 11 launch. It is all white men working at NASA. So except for one woman, there's one woman in the very center of the screen. And we think about, again, two nations in a space race, government workers, primarily male STEM professionals: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But our workforce of today in the space industry is very diverse. it's regions of the world, it's multi-generational, it's gender equality. And it's also a diversity of skills. We still need those STEM professionals, but we also need welders. We need individuals in the supply chain and manufacturing. We're looking in the US, we're going to be short 3.4 million workers in the manufacturing sector. So the gap is widening for those space professionals, not only in the STEM professional, but throughout that supply chain. So now you can be part of the space industry, from an artist to an astronaut, an investor to an entrepreneur, policymakers. Are we making the right policies for the future of space? Program managers, teachers, technicians. So the space industry has never had more opportunities for diversity, equity, and inclusion, women empowerment than it does today. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides. I could go on and forever and share more, but I only had 15 minutes. So I do want to share how grateful I am to have had this opportunity to join you today. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do know you're running late. So I want to be respectful of your next speaker too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelli. This was very, for many of us, I think we learned a lot, because when you talk of space, something else comes in our mind, right? So when you played so many cards on the table, that no, guys, we are contributing in a different way, but we are very much in the game of SDGs. And I think that made a lot of sense. In your last slide of workforce of 1960 or 1930 was really amazing, beautiful. And we can see the transition. So we are in the times of conscious planet. So we are talking about everything inclusive. So space is not a way. Yeah, absolutely. And I have worked in, in satellite imaging. We actually, during Sudan, my duty station was Sudan, and we did imaging for identifying health centers, and we could save mothers' life when they were pregnant, decreasing maternal mortality through finding out the primary health centers where they are, because like you gave a beautiful example of water, similarly, the women have to walk many, many miles before they can find a primary health center or a hospital to give birth to a child. So a lot of work is being done through space, and nobody can say that, space is not contributing to the conscious planet or environmental support. It's very much there. It's just how we look at it and how we view it and how we use it. If we are wanting to use space for destructive purposes, nobody can stop us. But the way you have presented your case, I think you should also put in your presentation. Or I'm sure there is a way that we are going to get in touch with you, and those who are interested in also pursuing their careers in space or creating more business should get in touch with you for more insights. And definitely we are coming to this beautiful, end of the third day of our summit, and we have only one presentation left. And we would want to give a lot of respect and time to the last presenter also, to show our patience and resilience to the work that we are committed to. So thank you, Shelli, and let us give now floor to our last presenter. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to join you. And as you give the floor to the last speaker, I did want to also highlight that mammogram technology that saves women's lives by detecting breast cancer came from space technology. It came from the Hubble program. Absolutely. And I look forward to joining you in the future. I have another presentation on how you can join us in the space industry. So again, I'm deeply honored to have joined you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So